The year 2020 could pass as one of the most dramatic in human history, particularly for the deluge of high-octave events that characterized it. Nigeria, like the rest of the world, came under the weight of the COVID-19 pandemic with unprecedented consequences. Interestingly, just as major traces of COVID-19 were fading, the End SARS protest sparked up with a violent coloration, leaving in its wake looting, death, loss of business hours, and wanton destruction of properties, both public and private.
Subject, risk us! Carry what you think, carry brother!
What End SARS movement looked one state might be another to another state. So it was really an opportunity for people to come out and voice their complaints. For example, in Niger, the End SARS was not against SARS as a police unit, but it gave them the opportunity to come out and complain about bad roads, about power failures, and what have you.
It is perhaps much more interesting to note that a threat to embark on a national industrial action by the organized labor in Nigeria, anchored on a hike in electricity tariffs and pump price of petroleum products, remained unresolved. In the interim, efforts to restore normalcy ensued on multiple fronts, the most notable of which is the deep dives embarked upon by the Nigeria Governors Forum. Some of the events at least succeeded in bringing to the fore the disconnect between the nation's leadership and youth across the country. Youth in the country protested manifest economic neglect, unemployment, a poor learning environment, and the absence of basic health care, among many other issues plaguing the country.
Part of what actually brought about the End SARS protest includes the feeling of lack of inclusion of youth in governance and managing the affairs of the country where they largely populated, and of course the issues of police brutality, and of course there are issues about unemployment. I can at best say that some of those issues are just being addressed, and therefore it's work in progress.
The issue of unemployment is a matter of great concern. We have hundreds of thousands of youths in Borno State, not only in Borno State, in the entire sub-region, as well as in the entire country, that are not employed. There is mismatch between our graduates and the labor market because they are not employable. The knowledge that we are impacting on our children in our schools is not enough to say that they will be on their own. So the kind of education that we are impacting on our children has to be looked into. We have to shift away from the elitist curriculum that we are working on it now. The issues of technical and vocational education is very important because you can see 100,000, 200,000 students, children are going into the university. At the end of their graduation, 95% of them cannot be employed because they haven't learned any skills. This is something very important. The issue of technical and vocational education, the issue of entrepreneurship development is key, is sine qua non to our own development.
It is instructive to note that the End SARS protest elicited a prompt response from the leadership.
In my state, I went out to meet them and I told them what I'm saying to you here, that look, what you're doing, I'm 100% in support of. But you've made your point. The president have heard you. We as governors, we went to the president to tell him that, look, sir, time to talk to your children and not a fellow Nigerian speech. father to children speech. I've heard you. You've made your point. Now it's time for you to return home.
The 5-point demand by the NSAS protesters had been acceded to with efforts in place to meet the demands, yet the deficit of trust continues to undermine the pronouncements and the efforts of state governments.
When the NSAS started, I engaged the youth. I met with them and I spoke to them. And out of my personal relationship with them, they understood and withdrew from the protest.
We knew that if we did not challenge the political status quo and get more participation and more involvement, particularly by younger people and women, in the political process, it was just a time bomb waiting to happen.
The burden of rebuilding confidence seems to hang heavily on the shoulders of the Nigeria Governors Forum, NGF, which as a body is increasingly proving to be a very dependable arbiter. It is still to the credit of the NGF that considerable amounts of palliatives and healthcare packages were gotten from several international donor agencies, Callivision, and the federal government.
The various relief materials, both from Callivision, from NEMA, from our own SEMA, and other donations came. Usually we go on, is what we do periodically. And every other local government, out of 21 local governments, only one, which is Lokoja local government, decided, because we allow them to choose their pattern of distribution. Some will choose to be delivering home by home. Some will choose to call on various wards or communities to come for their own palliatives. But in Lokoja, when the NSAS, protest, started and it was hijacked, the Lokoja, their pace of distribution was very slow. And what I did was to quickly wade in, to call on the local government chairman to quickly fast-track the distribution, and it was done successfully.
When people are talking about government holding palliative, the evidence was not in Jos. What the palliative that was looted in Jos was only brought a week. That was brought a week before it was looted. The first one that was brought about 3 months. The Callivision were brought about 3 or 4 months, and those ones were distributed. All of them were distributed.
Many may also not remember that the NGF negotiated and ensured that a truce between organized labor and the government was achieved. NSAS protests particularly may have put the forum and the individual governors of the 36 states across the country on auto drive as they assiduously worked to win the confidence of the people. But the impatience on the side of the people has remained its bane. We all know that youth restiveness is surmountable if the conscious effort of the NGF to mitigate it is adequately explained, holistically sustained, and faithfully implemented. Only then can we begin to witness genuine progress in our beloved country, Nigeria.